At 1 p.m., the sky above Pompeii began to die. By sunset, stones were falling from heaven. By midnight, people were praying inside homes that were slowly turning into tombs. And by morning, an entire city had vanished. Not from war, not from fire. Not from time, but from a mountain everyone thought was asleep. Imagine waking up on the final morning your city would ever exist, and having no idea. You make breakfast, your children argue over bread. A neighbor waves from across the street. The market's open. Bakers heat their ovens. Merchants lift their shutters. The streets begin to fill. Above everything stands Mount Vesuvius, silent, beautiful, familiar. For generations, people had lived beneath it. Farmers grew grapes on its slopes. Wealthy Romans built villas near its base. Children looked up at it every day and believed it was just a mountain. But deep under that mountain, pressure had been building for centuries. And in less than 19 hours, Pompeii would be gone. Buried under ash, pumice, and waves of superheated volcanic material so completely that nearly 2,000 years later, archaeologists would uncover people frozen in their final moments. A dog still wearing its collar. Families hiding inside rooms. People covering their faces from a death they could not understand. But Pompeii is not just a story about a volcano. It is a story about warning signs, about human denial, about a city that kept eating, trading, praying, laughing, arguing,
and making money until the mountain finally spoke, and when it did, the world went dark.
To understand why Pompeii still haunts the world, you first have to understand what Pompeii really was. Most people imagine a small Roman town, quiet streets, old houses, a few ruins beneath the Italian sun. But in 79 AD, Pompeii was alive. It was crowded, noisy, wealthy, political, and deeply connected to the Roman world. Around 20,000 people may have lived in and around the city. Its streets were paved with stone. Its sidewalks were raised so people could walk above mud, rainwater, and animal waste. There were bakeries, bathhouses, temples, taverns, workshops, theaters, brothels, fountains, and public squares. There were fast food-style restaurants called thermopolia, where ordinary people could buy hot meals from street-side counters. In many ways, Pompeii felt strangely modern. People complained about politicians. They promoted businesses. They painted election slogans on walls. They wrote jokes, insults, love messages, and gossip across the city. The walls of Pompeii were not silent. They were full of human voices. Vote for this man. This woman loves that man. This person was here. This person owes money. Pompeii was not a dead museum city. It was a living machine. And like every successful city, it had something valuable. Land. The soil around Mount Vesuvius was incredibly fertile. Volcanic earth helped grow grapes, olives, fruit, grain, and vegetables. Wine from the region moved through Roman trade networks. Fish sauce, one of Rome's favorite products, was produced and sold in places like Pompeii, the same mountain that made the land dangerous, also made it rich. That was the trap. Because Mount Vesuvius was not just a mountain, it was a volcano, and for hundreds of years, it had been silent. Long enough for danger to become ordinary, long enough for people to build homes beneath it, long enough for an entire city to forget what it was living under. But the mountain had not forgotten. By the time Pompeii was destroyed, no one alive remembered Vesuvius erupting. To the people who lived there, it was part of the landscape, a mountain, a landmark, a source of fertile soil, a beautiful shape on the horizon. The Roman world did not understand volcanoes the way we do today. They had no seismographs, no geological surveys, no emergency alerts, no evacuation maps, no official voice saying, "Leave now." But the earth had been speaking for years. 17 years before the eruption, in 62 AD, a powerful earthquake struck the region. Buildings collapsed, temples cracked, statues fell, water systems were damaged, homes had to be repaired or rebuilt. Pompeii was badly shaken. But the city did what cities often do after disaster. It rebuilt. The wealthy repaired their houses. Public buildings were restored. Shops reopened. Trade returned. Life continued. To the Romans, the earthquake was a tragedy, but not necessarily a warning. Today, many scientists believe the earthquake and later tremors may have been connected to volcanic activity beneath the region. But the people of Pompeii did not have that knowledge. They did not look at cracked walls and think, the volcano is waking up. They thought, the earth shook. Now we rebuild. In the years that followed, smaller tremors continued. The ground moved. Buildings cracked. Water sources may have changed. Animals may have behaved strangely. But none of these signs meant to Romans what they would mean to us now. A tremor became normal. A crack in the wall became normal. A strange smell in the air became normal. A mountain smoking in the distance became something people talked about. Then ignored, because businesses still had to open, bread still had to be baked, children still had to be fed, and tomorrow, everyone assumed, would look like yesterday. That is what makes Pompeii terrifying. The people were not foolish. They were human. And humans are dangerously good at explaining away danger when life is still moving. They were living under a countdown. They just could not hear it. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius is traditionally dated to August 24th, 79 AD, although some evidence suggests it may have happened later in the year. Whatever the exact date, the sequence of events was catastrophic. Around early afternoon, the mountain exploded. The summit burst open, sending a massive column of ash, gas, and volcanic rock high into the sky. From a distance, it may have looked like a dark tree rising from the earth, a giant trunk of smoke spreading outward at the top. Pliny, the younger, watching from across the Bay of Naples, later described the cloud in a way that became famous. It rose upward, then spread out like the crown of a pine tree. Today, eruptions like this are called Plinian eruptions, named after him. But for the people of Pompeii, there was no name for what they were seeing. There was only fear. The sun began to fade. Ash filled the air. Then the sky started raining stone, not lava, pumice. Light volcanic rock blasted high into the atmosphere and falling back down over the city. At first, the pieces may have seemed survivable. Dangerous, yes. Terrifying, yes. But not instantly deadly for everyone. And that detail matters. Because Pompeii was not destroyed in one sudden second. There was time. In the early hours, the roads were still open. The falling pumice was dangerous, but people could still run if they moved quickly. Many probably did. Some grabbed children. Some carried money. Some took jewelry. Some ran with documents, food, or whatever they could hold. Some left everything behind, but others stayed. And that decision became fatal. Some stayed to protect property. Some were elderly or sick. Some were too frightened to move. Some were enslaved people who may not have had freedom to leave. Some simply believed the worst would pass. That is one of the most painful truths about disasters. People do not always know they are inside one until it is too late. To them, this may have looked like a terrible storm of ash, not the end of the city. The mountain was not pouring slow rivers of lava through the streets like many people imagine. The real killer had not arrived yet. It was still building above them, and by evening, Pompeii was trapped in darkness. The nearby town of Herculaneum was hit first. Herculaneum was closer to the volcano and would be buried under much hotter volcanic material. Many people there may have fled toward the shoreline, hoping for rescue by boat. Centuries later, Archaeologists found human remains near the ancient waterfront. People gathered in boathouses, waiting, hoping, probably listening to the mountain tear itself apart above them. Then the surge came. The heat was extreme. Death was likely very fast. Back in Pompeii, the final hours were unfolding. The city had already endured hours of falling pumice. Buildings were damaged, streets were buried, people who remained were exhausted, terrified, and trapped. Then the surges began reaching Pompeii. The first waves may not have killed everyone immediately. Some people deep inside stronger buildings may have survived a little longer. But later waves were stronger, hotter, denser, deadlier. By morning, the city was gone. Not simply damaged, gone, buried beneath volcanic material. A city of streets, homes, temples, bakeries, shops, paintings, beds, tools, ovens, coins, jewelry, and human lives, sealed under ash. For those who escaped early, there was no home to return to. For those who waited, there was no escape. And this is where Pompeii becomes more than a disaster. Because most ancient cities disappear slowly, they decline. They are abandoned. They are rebuilt. They are conquered. Their stones are reused, but Pompeii stopped almost instantly. One day it was alive. The next day it was silent. Bread ovens were left behind. Paintings remained on the walls. Coins sat where people dropped them. Graffiti stayed visible. Rooms stayed arranged as if their owners had just stepped outside. The city was destroyed and preserved. That is why Pompeii feels different from almost every other ancient ruin. It did not fade away. It was frozen. And when the world finally uncovered it,
The nearby town of Herculaneum was hit first. Herculaneum was closer to the volcano and would be buried under much hotter volcanic material. Many people there may have fled toward the shoreline, hoping for rescue by boat. Centuries later, archaeologists found human remains near the ancient waterfront. People gathered in boathouses, waiting, hoping, probably listening to the mountain tear itself apart above them. Then the surge came. The heat was extreme. Death was likely very fast. Back in Pompeii, the final were unfolding. The city had already endured hours of falling pumice. Buildings were damaged. Streets were buried. The first waves may not have killed everyone immediately. Some people deep inside stronger buildings may have survived a little longer, but later waves were stronger, hotter, denser, deadlier. By morning, the city was gone, not simply damaged, gone, buried beneath volcanic material. A city of streets, homes, temples, bakeries, shops, paintings, beds. Escaped early, there was no home to return to. For those who waited, there was no escape. And this is where Pompeii becomes more than a disaster. Because most ancient, cities disappear slowly, they decline, they are abandoned, they are rebuilt, they are conquered, their stones are reused. But Pompeii stopped almost instantly. One day it was alive, the next day it was silent. Bread ovens were left behind, paintings remained on the walls, coins sat where people dropped them, graffiti stayed visible, rooms stayed arranged as if their owners had just stepped outside. The city was destroyed and preserved. That is why Pompeii feels different from almost every other ancient ruin. It did not fade away, it was frozen. And when the world finally uncovered it, Pompeii did something no ancient city had ever done before. It spoke. For more than 500 years, Pompeii was mostly hidden. The city disappeared beneath layers of volcanic material. Its name survived in ancient writing, but its streets were lost under the ground. Then excavations began, and what archaeologists found was unlawful, like almost anything else in the ancient world. Pompeii was not just a ruin, it was a time capsule. Home still had painted walls. Shops still had counters. Bakery still had ovens. Some loaves of bread were found carbonized, still shaped like the day they were baked. Graffiti remained on walls.
Political slogans, love notes, insults, advertisements, ordinary human messages. These were
not the words of emperors. They were not speeches carved into monuments. They were the voices of regular people.
That they had existed, and then there were the bodies. Over time, the soft tissue of victims decayed.
Inside hardened ash, leaving empty spaces where their bodies had been. In the 1800s, archaeologist Giuseppe Fiorelli developed a method of pouring plaster into those spaces. The result was haunting. Human form, forms appeared, people lying down, people curled up, people covering their faces, people caught in the final position
of their lives. These casts changed the way the world saw Pompeii, because history often feels distant.
Dates, empires, wars, kings, ruins. But Pompeii feels close.
से दुबांते की बुकिन करने अर्धों की भालतन भीति वारे बले झानु की उड़ात है.
Through the last day of their city. That is why Pompeii still affects people so deeply. It does not feel like ancient history. It feels like a warning that arrived too late. The most haunting thing about Pompeii is not that its people die. Everyone in the ancient world died. The haunting thing is that Pompeii lets us see the exact moment ordinary life became history. A meal interrupted, a street abandoned, a door blocked, a final attempt to breathe. Pompeii does not show us Rome as an empire. It shows us Rome as people. And that is why it still hurts. Pompeii is often told as a story of sudden destruction. A volcano erupts. A city dies. Archaeologists uncover it centuries later. But the deeper story is more uncomfortable.
Pompeii reminds us that civilizations can be powerful, wealthy, organized, and advanced.
And still vulnerable. Rome was one of the strongest empires on Earth. It had roads, armies, engineers, law, ports, trade networks, aqueducts, and political systems that controlled millions of people. But none of that stopped Vesuvius, and none of that helped Pompeii understand the danger in time. The warning signs were that. There, earthquakes, tremors, changes in the land, a mountain that was not as harmless as it looked. But warnings, signs only matter when people know how to read them. Pompeii was not destroyed because its people were stupid. It was destroyed because they lived in a world where the danger was bigger than their knowledge. And maybe that is why the story still feels modern. Because every age has its own mountains. Risks we explain away. Warnings we delay.
Play responding to. Dangers we normalize because life is busy, money is moving, and yesterday seemed fine.
People do not ignore danger because they want to die. They ignore danger because leaving is hard. Because changing plans is expensive. Because admitting fear feels embarrassing. Because someone always says, "It has never happened before." That sentence may be one of the most dangerous sentences in history. Pompeii asks a question that still matters.
How many warnings does a society need before it acts? And what happens when the answer comes too late?
Visual, modern Naples, with Vesuvius in the background, because Mount Vesuvius is not gone.
It is still there, still standing above the Bay of Naples, still quiet, still beautiful, still capable of reminding me of the world. Reminding the world that silence is not the same thing as safety. Today, millions of people visit Pompeii. They walk the stone streets. They step into ancient homes. They see painted walls, public baths, bakeries, temples, the theaters and fountains. They look at a city that should have vanished completely, but didn't. Because Vesuvius did something strange. It destroyed Pompeii, and then it preserved it. The ash that buried the city also protected it from time. So nearly 2,000 years later, Pompeii still speaks through its streets, through its walls, through its ovens, through its graffiti, through the silent shapes of the people who never escaped.
Pompeii is not only a place of death, it is a place of life. A reminder that ancient people were not so
different from us. They worked, they laughed, they loved, they argued, they made plans for tomorrow.
And then tomorrow never came. Mount Vesuvius is still there. Quiet, beautiful, standing above the Bay of Naples, just like it did before. And that may be the most chilling part of all, because Pompeii is not only a memory, it is a warning. The mountain is still there, and it is not finished. All because Pompeii is not only a memory, it is a warning. The mountain is still there, and it is not finished.